Hey everyone, it's Kathie. Thank you so much for joining me. I have part 2 card alternatives using September 2022 paper pumpkin kit. All right, we're going to get started with the first card. We have soft suede and fresh freesia. I think that's how you say it. And we have a round scallop die cut piece and then one of the toppers. And working on the scallop piece, we're going to be removing about 6 sections of the scallop edge. So starting off, I'm just going to take off 6 of those little humps. I'm pretty sure it's 6, and then I just kind of cut across. So if you don't know what we're going to be making, we're going to make an ice cream top and a cone as well. And I wasn't sure if I wanted the bottom part straight across, but then once I was done, I decided that I did want to have the bottom part in a scallop shape. So then I just kind of freehand cut scallop shapes at the bottom of that piece. So you can do it either way, straight at the bottom or just scallop it. All right, so we're going to use the topper piece that kind of looks like gingham in a way. We're going to use that for the bottom portion of the ice cream. And I'm just freehand drawing out the cone. And then I'm going to bring in the little trimmer and just line that up, and we'll get a nice straight edge. So it's going to end up looking like a little triangle. All right, and then with the soft suede, just shading the edge just to mute the orange on there, so we don't want it too strong. I should have shaded the top as well, but I end up doing that afterwards. And for the ice cream topper, I'm using that lovely pinky ink, fresh freesia. Say that fast 3 times. So we're just going to shade in the entire piece, but I do leave a little white highlighted area, and that way it looks a little more dimensional. So I'm just building on it and then getting it nice and dark until I'm happy with the shade. I had these brushes for a while and I just hadn't used them until now. I decided I'll try them out, but I just kind of find that more ink gets on the mat than on the piece, especially here when you're using a darker color. I don't know, maybe it's me, but I find that, maybe I need to practice some more. All right, I pulled out the real red because I wanted to add some stars at the top of the ice cream. And then I got a little dot on there. So I'm bringing in the red Stampin' Write marker, and I'm just going to add a couple of more dots around the stars. And I'm just going to corner around the top part of that cone because it sticks out just a little bit. And with some glue dots, we're going to stick that down on top of the cone. I like how it turned out, actually. Okay, next, I decided to use some of that gold twine, just 1 strand of twine to make a bow. And we'll stick that on the side of the ice cream, and then this flower that I made using the spiderweb stamp. The videos were actually grouped in a different order, so they're not in the same order of when they were made, because I wanted to have non-Halloween on part 2 and Halloween cards in part 3. The last card is where I show you how I made these flowers. All right, so we're going to raise this ice cream in just a moment. But I think what I'm going to do first, after I finish fussing with the bow, is stamp the sentiment. And I am using some of the sentiments from last month's paper pumpkin. I decided to just go with that instead of rummaging through the stamp sets. I'm just getting the ice cream ready, and then that's when I decided I want to add some balmy blue on the center of the panel. Instead of on the outside, I'm going to add blue on the inside. All right, so now we're just sticking down the ice cream, and then I have Melon Mambo panel cut down. Just mounting that on that, and then we'll mount it onto the mini card base. I like how it turned out. All right, so that's the first card. Now we're going to be jumping into a couple of stills of the finished card. And then onto the second card, we're using Pacific Point and Balmy Blue. And we're going to be doing another mini slimline card. So this panel is cut down to 3x6. And I did start off using the Balmy Blue, just shading the bottom part of the panel, just to give it some color. And I almost went halfway, almost. And then I changed colors because I want the bottom part of this panel really dark. I was tempted to bring in the Night of Navy, but I thought that might be a little too dark. So that looks about right, but the bottom part needs to be a little bit bolder. The Hello sentiment is from last month's Paper Pumpkin. And then onto the round scallop piece. And honestly, I had to stop the video and basically count what was removed. And I had to check it like 3 times. And each time I got a different answer. So final answer for the bottom portion of this fishy that we're creating, I removed 6 scallop edges. So 6 bumps. And I left 2 bumps on each side, the left and right. And working from the right side where you left 2 of the scallop bumps, you're going to create 7 points or 7 pointy tips by removing the curved bumps. So you're just going to snip away and create 7 pointy tips going from the right to the left. And when you get to the 8th hump, you're going to just snip that right off and then connect it somewhat to the other 2 humps that you've left. And then there's your fishy. You definitely need visuals for this because it was kind of challenging to even explain how I cut this out. So it definitely is a challenging little fishy, but the results I think came out really nice. All right, we're going to use crushed curry and we're going to shade in just the top part of the fishy. I did draw a line at the bottom to kind of separate the belly portion. And later on, I'll come in with the black Sharpie marker to define that pencil line. And then I did define a little bit of the mouth section on the left side. And you know what? You could create this in any color, but I decided to just go with a kind of golden color. All right. And then I used one of the old scallop pieces that I was kind of testing out. So I'm using the back side. You only need one section that has 3 of those humps, we'll call it, and then another section with just 2, which is going to be the fin. So I'm just coloring in these 2 pieces, but I ended up coloring them all with the crushed curry. Just piecing it together, and I think he looks pretty cute. So we're just going to trim back the little fin. Do you know what it is? All right, a little bit of blue on the bottom of the belly, whatever blue that was left on the brush. And now we're just going to stick the tail down. And I did stick down the fin with a dimensional, but then afterwards I realized that I forgot to do one step. So I did take off that fin. Now you could leave it the way it is. I think it looks pretty darn cute. And then you'll see what I'm going to do next. So I'm ripping off the fin and then I'm grabbing the ghost stamp and with soft suede, I should have maybe used crumb cake, something lighter, or I should have maybe stamped with second generation, but still I didn't mind that it was kind of bold in color. So we're just stamping some spikes onto this little fishy. So you know what it is? Add a comment. Let me know what you think it is. All right. And then with Balmy Blue, we're going to add some spikes on the belly. And I'm just making sure there's no ink anywhere. So that's why my fingers are getting super inky. I'm just defining the belly section with the fine tip marker and the mouth. And then I stuck the fin back on. All right, so we're ready to mount the card. So aside from a little bit of fussing with the fishy, it's a relatively simple card. And we're going to mount the front panel onto Pacific Point and then onto the slimline card base. And then with the fishy, we're going to raise it with some dimensionals. And I happened to just grab this pink Stampin' Write marker, and it worked out pretty good. And then I grabbed a different one, and then it created this little dot in the center. Test out the cap before you stamp out the bubble. So the inside cap creates a bigger circle, and then the outside creates a smaller circle. So I did one of the inside cap and two of the outside cap. But the first circle wasn't quite complete, so I'm going to kind of fill in that line gently afterwards with Balmy Blue and a little tick mark for a highlight. And that's it. Super easy, right? I do like how it turned out. I did case this card, but the challenge here was to create this little fishy. All right, so now we're on to the final card, and this is where I made the flower. So here's the stamp, the spiderweb stamp, and it is the back side of it. We're using crushed curry, Balmy Blue, and the fresh freesia. I'll never get it. Okay, so second generation to create these flowers, but I was kind of over fussing on the first one. And then the second one, it came off my block. It still had a little bit of water on it. So basically, you only want to do second generation and then stamp it twice each time. And then just for good measure, I decided to stamp one more of the crushed curry one, seeing that I wasn't quite too pleased with the first one, but then I still didn't like the second one. So I just went with the first one, and you'll see how it looks afterwards, and you won't even notice. Now at this stage, I did fussy cut out each flower, but you could add the details in before cutting this out. I think it might have been just a little bit easier to add the details in before cutting it out. With the fine tip marker, I'm going to draw the center of the flower, and we're just going to dot around it in a circle and then add little tick marks throughout. And I do try to concentrate a little bit more on one side, and it'll add some dimension to the center of the flowers. All right, and then we're just going to draw some lines once I finish adding my little dots. And I think I add lines every 2 or 3 of those petals. I was very tempted to bring in the thicker end from the black Stampin' Write marker, but I persisted and just used this fine tip marker. And this crushed curry flower, even though I wasn't too happy with it, once it's cut out, it'll look just fine. Okay, so I did make a total of 6, 2 of each color, and I did use them throughout the cards that I made. So you'll see it in the next video, which is all Halloween. All right, so this piece was left over, which is the topper, and I trimmed it down to 1 3/4 by 2 inches. So just quickly showing you the measurements on the mat. I actually really like this mat. I do wish it was just a smidge bigger, but all in all, I do like using it. Okay, so on the short side of this piece, which is at the 1 3/4 side, we're just going to trim it back to create a curved bottom, and then we'll round out the corners. Make sure each side is pretty even. And then with fresh freesia, we'll call it the purpley color. We're just going to shade the bottom part and then go up towards the center. I really do like how it turned out, but then once I finished the card, I realized that I made just a little bit of a boo-boo. I ended up using the purpley side. So this element should have been white to begin with, but I got carried away and I ended up using the purpley pink side. You want to heavily shade that bottom to give that extra depth. And then using the same color, I did stamp stars at the bottom, but unfortunately when the ink dries, everything just lightened up a lot. So when you make this, make it with white cardstock using the same colors. That way you won't notice the ink fading too much. Okay, this part is pretty challenging. You're going to freehand draw this oblong oval circle, and then you're going to freehand cut it out, and you want to try and get the entire piece as even as possible. So I did not look around for anything to try and create this long oval shape other than just drew it out. So now I'm going to fuss just a little bit to make sure the edges are nice and straight and even. So if you're not sure what I'm making, I am making a cake with a saucer or a base. And then I'm going to add a little bit of shading, whatever blue I had left on the brush. Okay, this purpley piece, I'm using the back side, just drawing a scallop edge. And this is actually from the kit, this piece. And then before I cut out that scallop edge, I'm just cutting this piece into a point just to help me. It is a very tiny piece and it is very fussy to create a scallop edge on a piece this tiny. But I persisted. I was very determined to get this piece out of that tiny little label. Okay, so I did do it. Just taking off the pencil marks. And then with the same purpley color in Stampin' Write marker, I'm going to draw lines on a slant. Okay, so here's a little piece I have, a leftover piece, and this is going to be for the ear. I hope you caught the measurements. So I'm just going to fold it in half and then freehand cut out ears. And then we'll just cut it in half once I'm happy with that. And then with the same purpley color, just drawing in some lines for the center part of the ear. And I do shape it afterwards. All right, so here's 3 of those flowers that I made earlier. Kind of butt those together, and then I put the blue one in the center. And then we'll stick it on top of the cake. But before I do, we're going to shape the ears. And then I'm going to check out the horn to make sure that I'm happy with the length. So I'm sticking it down with some glue dots. Get that all ready. And then we're just going to assemble that whole topper piece. And now back to the cake. We're going to stick that down. All right, we're going to be jumping into another section that's a little bit challenging. All right, so before we stick down the flowers and the horn piece, I drew 2 dots kind of in the center. And I'm using this black bottom base piece to draw the curved lines to the eye. And for the life of me, it looked like the eyeball was, or the eyelid part was going to be super low on the second side. But surprisingly, it was just slightly lower. Okay, no pressure, but try to get it just right first or second time. Don't erase too much because then you'll be creating some white spots on the cake. You probably won't notice it if you use a white cardstock for the cake base. So I usually can do one side better than the other. My eyes, I guess, looking down are by no means perfect, but close enough. So I'm going to grab the black marker and try to draw it as straight across as possible without shaky hands. And there was a little section on the left eye that I wasn't happy with. So I did go back afterwards once I erased the pencil marks and kind of build up on that just a little bit because it looked like there was a little squiggly section there that I wasn't liking. All right, so with dimensionals, we're going to raise the flowers over top of the cake. I really like how this turned out. It's really pretty. Although I still wish that I had used the white part of the cardstock for the cake because I really believe it would stand out a lot more. All right, so I load up the back with dimensionals as well as the Terran tape. So before I stick down that piece, I stamped some stars on the panel and the sentiment from last month's kit. And honestly, I just didn't know what to do with this background. So I just shaded around the edges with crushed curry, but somehow it looks more yellow than golden. I don't know. In comparison to the stars, it's kind of weird. And I don't put my ink pads away until after I've completed the video and such. And I looked through it and I had no other yellow. So for some weird reason, it's just coming out looking too yellow. And after I mounted this card and completed it, I really hated it. I did not like the layout. It was just awful. So I trimmed it all back and I grabbed some melon mambo and I used that as a contrasting color. And you'll see that in the stills shortly. So I just stuck down the cake onto the yellow panel and then onto the card base. So that's the finished card. I'm just not too pleased with it. It seems like it's missing something, but here's the still. I just cut it back, like I said, and I mounted it onto Melon Mambo, which made it look so much better. And here's a quick shot of all 3 cards that was made in this video. And stay tuned for part 3. This video is going to be just Halloween cards. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.